Greetings and welcome to Healthcare Leadership Live. My name is Mike Lyons, the host of the show. And, this show is about healthcare leaders. It's for healthcare leaders who want to level up their clinics, but not just level up their business, clinical business, but level up their leadership and really improve themselves. And I think it all starts with yourself. And today's guest is really going to be talking about that. It's Dr. Irfan Ali has joined me here on the show. Dr. Ali, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today.
Absolutely. And I am so glad that we were able to get in touch because you have such a unique perspective, and I think that the listeners will really appreciate your diverse perspective. You have so many skills, and you tie a lot of things in together with your perspective on healthcare and leadership. And just for the audience here, I want to say Dr. Ali is a CEO of a healthcare group. He's founded a nonprofit that does work in his community with healthcare for help providing healthcare to people experiencing homelessness. He's an author. He's an artist. I mean, he's a multi-talented individual. And so I guess where I'd like to start with our conversation, Dr. Ali, is you have an interesting story of how you came here. Came here to the United States. So your life background, I think, is interesting. Would you mind just sharing a little bit about how you came to be here and what is it that drives you now today?
Again, thank you, Mike, for having me today. I think the question that you asked, I can talk about this for a few hours.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that one of the things which has always been important to me is how you can continue this journey where you're working on yourself and trying to improve even your self awareness. And then another thing which is important to me is, life is just not all about you. You have to think about others around you. My journey coming from Pakistan all the way to Chicago is an interesting one. I never had a I was never really planning to come over here. I used to run a charity back home, and those chaotic years trying to do the good with the political upheaval and everything which happens. That I made a decision at that time that I cannot continue for my own safety and everything which is concerned. So I came to America. I was already a doctor, but I didn't have my USMLEs, my medical license exams. So I started in this country doing some research in the morning and doing carpet cleaning in the evening to pay the bills for many, many, many years. And I think that that taught me a lot. I think that doing something completely out of your comfort zone, that was the start for me. And I thought I know that I realized at that time that there are so many things even about myself that I just have never really discovered.
Mm.
And I need to make sure that moving forward, I need to do the best I can to not just learn about myself, my self-awareness, but different tools and different things that I can do to make maybe one day make a difference in somebody's life. I remember this is back in late 1990s. I was talking to a friend, and I said that if ever given an opportunity to create employment, I will make sure that it is just and it is good for people. It should be a shared dream, not just a dream of mine. And I think that has been my north, and that has been something that I've been doing for a long time.
Well, I totally admire that, and as a human resources person, I got into HR because I really believe that we can create win-win workplaces. So just what you're
Uh-huh.
talking about is create a just environment, but but also make it a profit for the business, a benefit for the patient.
Hmm.
Everyone wins in that situation.
Hmm.
Sounds like you have that same outlook.
I do. I think that, like I said earlier, we always say that uh, I want to do this. I want to do this for myself. I want to grow. I want to educate myself. But we forget that success is dependent on teams. I mean, you
Mm,
can have individual success. You can say that I have done this. I have done some magnificent work, but we forget to talk about the journey it takes.
mm,
And the journey teaches you a lot. Sometimes it humbles you. Sometimes this journey could be difficult, but it is much easier, like I said, if you have a shared dream with other people that are working alongside you. And I think that that has been my biggest success, that able to work with people, even able to work with people who are difficult. I think
mm.
that defines a leader significantly differently than somebody who can only work with their favorites.
Yeah, that is really important. One of the things that you've talked about is that in any business and any organization, there are people who may not always be visible. They may not always be out front and on the cover of the practice, or they're invisible. They're hidden, right? And you have kind of a perspective on that, and maybe your experience of cleaning carpet might have helped you kind of come to that. But
It
like, I'd love to
did.
hear more about your take on that.
Sure. So I remember that moment very clearly. I was doing some leukemia research in the morning. I was working on some data entry and trying to figure it out what would be the right methodology moving forward. In the evening, I went to a Home Depot. I think I was supposed to clean Home Depot that night.
Mm,
And I changed from my suit that I was wearing in the morning to the clothes that are required for cleaning. And I remember that the moment you change into a certain uniform, sometimes some people just become invisible to a lot of folks out there. I remember when I was cleaning in that corridor and people were walking by, and some of them are not even giving you a smile or just even say hi to you.
mm,
I feel that these invisible people around us are everywhere.
mm,
Just because somebody thinks I am not important. And I felt that day that I'm important in a way that I'm important to my family. I'm important to my friends. I do exist. But the society and the way that we look at things, that we completely forget the invisible people. The same thing walking down the streets, you see these homeless individuals. That is another shade of invisible people, that somebody is on the floor, passed out. Sometimes you're wondering if they are even alive or not.
mm,
So that has been one of my mainstay, that I want to make sure that the people who are around us, who makes us what we are today in some ways or form. For example, you could be the best neurosurgeon ever, but the person who cleans the room does not clean it right, or the people who bring the supplies to you, the truckers who bring all those things to the hospitals, the neurosurgeon will not be able to do anything. We all have a role which is more important than the titles that we come up with. And
mm.
that is a big philosophy in my life, that titles make you entitled. Roles make you a friend to somebody because you are helpful. And so those concepts are very important to me in everyday life.
So if let's say, if there's a physician out there listening, or maybe a CEO or a practice
Mhm.
leader, and they resonate with that message, how can they help to elevate and appreciate and or engage the people in their practice that maybe are not as visible? Are there certain things that you think a doctor or a leader can do help engage those people so that they
Mhm.
feel important and they realize their value?
So I think it all comes down to I try to practice and I try to make sure that my north is always the human element. Even medicine, healthcare is about human being. It's a human business, right? It is, you're not just dealing with organs, you're just not dealing with the kidneys and liver. You're dealing with people who are afraid, of
Mm,
what the outcomes would be. There are people who are, who are showing their vulnerabilities, that they want to see hope out there.
mm,
And I think that in everything that we do, whether it's business, medicine, politics, whatever somebody is into, the human element should never be forgotten. And
mm,
I think that sometimes we bury ourselves in statistics and the outcomes and the mortalities and the turnovers and length of stays and P&Ls and margins, that we forget that by the end of the day, there's a human out there that is making a difference in everything that we do. We work in a very high stake environment, and it requires leader to gather themselves and regulate themselves, but at the same time be a support to the people around you. And
mm.
sometimes we just forget that.
This show is sponsored by Seasoned Advice HR Services, where I help clinical healthcare businesses to make more money and save more money by hiring better, retaining better, and reducing your HR risk. If you would like an HR assessment or ongoing HR support, please reach out to me at seasoned-advice.com.
One thing I want to touch on is you've written a book, Fractured but Fearless. And I have multiple questions about that. The first, I guess, is the title, the title of the book. I'm curious what inspired the title, and what might readers find. What is it that you're hoping that readers will find within this book?
So I think that when I was writing the book, I wanted to make sure that I've seen a lot of books where people want to learn from somebody who has been maybe successful in business, and they want to write that how you can be a successful businessman. I wanted to write about a journey it takes. I wanted to talk about that the failures are the pauses in between which teaches you something different for the next one. So the book is about lessons from failures. It is not about how to get rich. It is not about how to run, how to build businesses. It is all about that how we can first change ourselves a little bit, have self awareness about yourself, and then I wanted to write about all the things that I didn't do right, all the things that I notice other people not doing right,
Mm,
and what I learned from it, and what I did the next time around that it made a difference. I also wanted to make sure that some of the fundamental things that I've seen in leaders, the traps in leadership, that people sometimes their ego gets in the way.
mhm,
Sometimes they're too much trying to figure out the competition that they lose their own identity. And I think that knowing what you do and how you can be different, the book is all about that. Just because somebody is stuck, as I have been stuck in my life many times, there have been times when I'm sitting in a room and I'm wondering, man, how am I going to get out of this? How am I going to pay that bill? How am I going to make sure that I'm able to pay the rent? And am I going to get a residency? Am I going to get a fellowship? All those uncertainties that make you think this is the end sometimes. But it is not the end. I think it is for the people who feel that there is no light out there. Maybe they can take a pause and think. And I think that this book is all about that journey. That maybe someone who's stuck in life can see some light and maybe can learn few things from there.
you know, it's tough out there, and a lot of clinical businesses, they have those moments of struggle. If you're a physician, you own a practice, and there are a lot of day-to-day struggles, and there is uncertainty. Is there a one tip or insight that you might give to a physician out there who is maybe owning a practice and wondering, gosh, where is this going? Can I sustain this? I was talking to a doctor the other day who was asking those same questions, and seemingly successful, multiple physicians in the practice, but it was struggling, and she was kind of expressing this sort of, gosh, I don't know that this is sustainable. What is there one thing that you might say to a physician like that who's having a moment like that?
So those moments are going to be, they are numerous in everybody's career. Am I going to make it? I think the best answer is, every time I see a big problem, I dissect that into smaller pieces. Like you cannot eat a full pineapple. You have to eat it in chunks, right? So every time I see that there's a problem of any sort, I like to divide that into smaller pieces. For practices, for businesses, first you need to see what is not working, and the why it is not working. The why of things is very important. There's a whole chapter I wrote about the why of things. We all talk about the why of things, but we don't talk about the how of things or the when of things. The how could very well be the tools that you require to make a change, the teams that you require that can make you successful, the processes that you need to put in that can make it better. But just being afraid and not having self awareness of why something is not working, cannot really take you too far. The other thing is that if somebody feels that they are not able to move forward, they're not being successful, it doesn't mean that that is the end. There is help out there in every way or form.
Mm,
Even in my book, I mentioned many times that I have to rely on other people to maybe review some of the processes that what I am doing could be done differently. I was just on a call with one of the hospital administrators, and one of the process that we are doing for quality is not showing the results that we desire. And my first discussion was that what we can do differently first, rather than asking everybody else to change.
mm,
And I think sometimes that is the biggest hurdle, that we are not ready for change, and then change and failures and all of those things gives you that courage. That courage, it is like, I call it the failure recovery methodology,
mm,
that once you fail, between the two failures you learn something different, and then you go to the next step.
mm,
And failure is can be used as a reluctant mentor towards success,
mm,
rather than just sitting on that part. But every time there's a big problem, I always say dissect it into small pieces and take one piece at a time, whether it is your scheduling, whether it is the financing, whether it is your strategy. Something needs to be done differently. And maybe sometimes you need to ask for help from others. We
mm,
are afraid to ask for others to help us, because it makes us feel or look weak. So that we have to work out of that perception, and go to the next step.
mm. Getting help, it can be so hard to recognize that you need help and then to ask for help,
Mhm.
as physicians or senior leaders, we're told and taught and trained, hey, you've got to
Mhm.
figure this out. You've got to do this. And high achieving individuals, we all probably have this mental recording that says, I've got to do it all by
Right.
myself, right? But
Uh-huh.
I guess that's not true, is it?
No, that's not true. I mean, as I used to say. Success is dependent on a couple of things. One is, when the lady knocks on your door, you need to be dressed up. When you say dressed up, I mean that all the hard work, all the tools that you need, you need to make sure that you have acquired them by then. But that itself does not really do it. The second thing that you need to have is, you are going to require help from some other folks. Success just doesn't happen independently. Usually a team effort. And then the third part is the timing. Sometimes that you need to make sure that you're able to pivot and change at the right time, because if you don't, look what happened to blockbusters.
Mm,
Look, what happened to some of the technologies that we have seen grow and completely disappear. So sometimes we have to change, and
mm,
change gives us, provide us with a different insight, rather than just trying to do the same thing exactly the same way all the time. And
mm.
I feel that makes us stubborn, and that moves us backwards rather than moving forward.
I want to shift gears a little bit here because I alluded to earlier your passion for art, and there's some artwork on the cover of your book there, which I assume is a work that you
Yeah,
created. Yeah, can you talk about that piece of artwork and maybe also about the role of art in your life?
sure.
Yeah.
So, Mike, one thing which is important to me, I feel that we all need something, um, uh, to you can call it meditation, you can call it any mindful exercise, but you need to find some time where you can focus, on some way, to think outside of every day that we live in. I think for me, art is their venue where I don't have to worry about everything else. That's like the meditation for me, that I can paint, I can sculpt, I can take pictures, and I can express myself in different ways. For you, it could very well be yoga, it could be running, but it is something outside of the work that we live in. Now, when you think about art, maybe it is my escapism that, life is absolute, full of absolutes, right? The laws of physics are absolutes. Our time on this earth is absolute, right? Art, when you paint, you can bend those absolutes. You can, bend that line, which cannot be turned in a real life.
Mm,
You can deal with abstracts. And so that is my way of expressing, some of the things that I look at in a different way. And it's a great escape for me to, just not think about something else, and it gives me some peace. It brings me focus. I can work on a 2-inch, metal plate for
mm,
2 hours without having any other thing to worry about. And
mhm,
I think that gives me that invigorates me. It gives me more energy, and I can think more clearly than
mm,
than the whole rut of, 9 to 5, 9 to 5, and everything which comes with it. So, art is a great way to, even to think, about a different way of, accomplishing your projects.
mm,
It is a great tool. Everybody has to find their own way of going to the next step. For me, it is art, and this is something. Even all my chapters, either it's a photography or an art, which tells about the story, and this is something which, I really like to. Really keeps me grounded all the time.
mm. You said something just now that really resonated for me, and it's about connecting your your passion for art or running or yoga, whichever that is, connecting with the natural world, and how it affects your productivity. and it really gives back. I have found that kind of thing, it puts right back into your work because it makes
Mhm.
you a better person. It re-energizes you. And I don't know, have you found that to be true? And have you found that people who don't have an outlet like that maybe struggle, at work, or and maybe they get overloaded? Or have you seen struggles with people who haven't?
Burnout. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I see that every day. I mean, in healthcare, especially the times that we have seen during COVID and everything else which
Mm,
comes around. I think that people who do not have other outlets burn out pretty fast. I think that people who cannot find time for themselves, burn out pretty fast.
mm,
I think that in the past 20 years or so, almost 20 years ago, I made a pledge that every year I'm going to try to learn something different.
mm,
It could be quantum physics. It could very well be archery. It could be diving. I will run this year. I've learned to paint,
mm,
do photography in a different way. But that makes you interesting, even just for yourself. Forget about anybody else. I think it gives you a certain level of confidence that you have learned a new skill. And otherwise, I mean, our work is tough. I mean, you're dealing with, especially in healthcare, you're dealing with people's life. There is nothing more personal. There is nothing more valuable than what we do. So if you don't find any other outlets, it just becomes a rut. You cannot really move forward. So
mm,
for my own sanity of my mind, I ask everybody that find something which gives you some peace,
mm,
whatever that is. But it has to be not just always your 9 to 5 job, not
mm.
just always that we have trained or to train for. It provides you some different avenues, some different ways to think about things.
Well, I think that's a great place to conclude our conversation. We've talked about so many different things, and ending on this idea of self-care and feeding back into yourself is so powerful. Thank you for spending time with me, Dr. Ali, today. I think it's been a wonderful conversation. How can people learn more about you, and maybe get their hands on your book if they're interested?
Thank you so much, Mike. It's been my pleasure. And also for the viewers, you can go to my website, irfanAlimd.com, irfanalimd.com. And you can see some of my artwork and photography in the gallery. And you can even get a link for my book. But Mike, it's been a pleasure. I've seen some of your work, some of the work that you are doing. I think it is helping a lot of folks. I think that working in this space, what you're doing is giving hope, and I think that's the biggest thing that anybody can do. So I really appreciate you bringing
Awesome.
me on board today.
Well, that brings this episode of I Care Leadership Live to a conclusion. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show on your podcast app and share it with someone who would value the content. I promise to bring you more guests and content to help make you a better I Care clinical leader. I also invite you to subscribe to my HR newsletter for I Care leaders. You can find information about that at seasoned-advice.com. Now go out there and lead with confidence.